In this video, we are going to expose what have been hidden from you for thousands of years. This may have been the reason why you haven't accepted the flat earth. After this video, your view will change. Without much ado, let's get started. When it comes to the Book of Enoch, I know many want to dispute whether or not we should consider it canon, or even a valid source for deriving, confirming and/or elaborating on the canonized biblical truths. Many commentaries have been written giving the various perceived pros and cons of doing so. For me, I have no need to consider it scripture. However, I do value it primarily because the authors of scripture certainly did, even to the point of directly quoting from it, while under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. Concerning the seeming ambiguities of canonized scripture as it pertains to the issues being addressed here in this video, I like the way Robert Shadewald handles the Book of Enoch in his online article. Let me quote him directly here. Ambiguities in ancient documents can often be elucidated by consulting contemporary documents. The most important ancient document describing Hebrew cosmology is 1 Enoch, sometimes called the Ethiopic Book of Enoch, one of those long, disjointed, scissors and paste jobs beloved by ancient scribes. For a dozen or so centuries, European scholars knew 1 Enoch only from numerous passages preserved in the patristic literature. In 1773, the Scottish adventurer James Bruce found complete copies in Ethiopia. Numerous manuscripts of 1 Enoch have since been found in Ethiopian monasteries. Turn of the century scholars concluded that parts of the book are pre-Maccabean, and most, perhaps all, of it was composed by 100 BC Charles, 1913. These conclusions were largely vindicated when numerous fragments of 1 Enoch were found among the so-called Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran. 1 Enoch is important for another reason. Unlike the canonical books of the Bible, which, in my view, were never meant to teach science, sections of 1 Enoch were intended to describe the natural world. The narrator sometimes sounds like a 2nd century BC Carl Sagan explaining the heavens and earth to the admiring masses. The Enochian cosmology is precisely the flat earth cosmology previously derived from the canonical books. Whether or not we consider the Book of Enoch to be scripture is irrelevant. If you at least accept it as having any measure of credibility as a contemporary biblical commentary, you'll see this concept of a flat, enclosed earth is described in even more detail by its writers, thus revealing how the ancient Hebrews viewed the heavens, earth, sun, moon and stars when they both wrote and read the canonized texts. For Enoch to have been so well preserved in multiple copies in the Dead Sea Scrolls and for authors such as Jude and later church fathers to quote directly from it, this shows us the book was held in high regard, at least well into the first few centuries AD. I contend it is still worthy of taking notice of in our day as well. Especially, when you consider the opening words of the book, 1 Enoch 1-1. The words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and righteous, who will be living in the day of tribulation, when all the wicked and godless are to be removed. 2. And he took up his parable and said, Enoch, a righteous man, whose eyes were opened by God, saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens, which the angels showed me, and from them I heard everything, and from them I understood as I saw, but not for this generation, but for a remote one which is for to come. I believe we are that remote, future generation, that was to come and live in the day of tribulation. Enoch's view on the nature of the earth. 1 Enoch 18 verses, 1. I saw the treasuries of all the winds, I saw how he had furnished with them the whole creation and the firm foundations of the earth. 2. And I saw the cornerstone of the earth, I saw the four winds which bear, the earth and, the firmament of the heaven. 3. And I saw how the winds stretch out the vaults of heaven, and have their station between heaven and earth, these are the pillars of the heaven. 4. I saw the winds of heaven which turn and bring the circumference of the sun and all the stars to their setting. 5. I saw the winds on the earth carrying the clouds, I saw the paths of the angels. I saw at the end of the earth the firmament of the heaven above. And I proceeded and saw a place which burns day and night, where there are 7 mountains of magnificent stones, 3 towards the east, and 3 towards the south. 7. And as for those towards the east, one was of colored stone, and one of pearl, and one of jacinth, and those towards the south of red stone. 8. But the middle one reached to heaven like the throne of God, of alabaster, and the summit of the throne was of sapphire. 9. And I saw a flaming fire. And beyond these mountains is a region the end of the great earth, there the heavens were completed. 11. And I saw a deep abyss, with columns of heavenly fire, and among them I saw columns of fire fall, which were beyond measure alike towards the height and towards the depth. 12. And beyond that abyss I saw a place which had no firmament of the heaven above, and no firmly founded earth beneath it, there was no water upon it, and no birds, but it was a waste and horrible place. Is Job 26 verse 7, concerning the earth hanging on nothing, just a confirmation of what Enoch is saying here? Enoch described a place where there was nothing. Job describes the same. Job 26, verse 7 said, He stretched out the north over the empty place, and hanged the earth upon nothing. Enoch clearly describes the earth on a foundation, like so many other authors as seen above. But he also describes a place beyond the ends of the earth. A place of horrible nothingness. Whatever your view may be, it is clear, either one of these authors has borrowed from the other or they both were inspired by the same source. Enoch again describes this place. Now, let's look at this other excerpt from the same book of Enoch. 1 Enoch 21 verse 1. And I proceeded to where things were chaotic. 2. And I saw there something horrible, I saw neither a heaven above nor a firmly founded earth, but a place chaotic and horrible. 1 Enoch 23 verse 1. From thence I went to another place to the west of the ends of the earth. 1 Enoch 33 verse 1. And from thence I went to the ends of the earth and saw there great beasts, and each differed from the other, and, I saw, birds also differing in appearance and beauty and voice, the one differing from the other. Verse 2. And to the east of those beasts I saw the ends of the earth whereon the heaven rests, and the portals of the heaven open. Verse 3. And I saw how the stars of heaven come forth, and I counted the portals out of which they proceed, and wrote down all their outlets, of each individual star by itself, according to their number and their names, their courses and their positions, and their times and their months, as Uriel the holy angel who was with me showed me. Verse 4. He showed all things to me and wrote them down for me, also their names he wrote for me, and their laws and their companies. Enoch's view on the nature of the sun, moon and stars. Now we will examine the view of Enoch on the sun, the moon and the stars as contained in 1 Enoch chapter 72. Here we go. Enoch chapter 72, verse 1. The book of the courses of the luminaries of the heaven, the relations of each, according to their classes, their dominion and their seasons, according to their names and places of origin, and according to their months, which Uriel, the holy angel, who was with me, who is their guide, showed me, and he showed me all their laws exactly as they are, and how it is with regard to all the years of the world and unto eternity, till the new creation is accomplished which doth till eternity. Verse 2. And this is the first law of the luminaries, The luminary the sun has its rising in the eastern portals of the heaven, and its setting in the western portals of the heaven. Verse 3. And I saw 6 portals in which the sun rises, and 6 portals in which the sun sets and the moon rises and sets in these portals, and the leaders of the stars and those whom they lead, 6 in the east and 6 in the west, and all following each other in accurately corresponding order, also many windows to the right and left of these portals. Verse 4. And first there goes forth the great luminary, named the sun, and his circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, and he is quite filled with illuminating and heating fire. Verse 5. The chariot on which he ascends, the wind drives, and the sun goes down from the heaven and returns through the north in order to reach the east, and is so guided that he comes to the appropriate, lit, that, portal and shines in the face of the heaven. Verse 6. In this way he rises in the first month in the great portal, which is the fourth those 6 portals in the cast. Verse 7. And in that fourth portal from which the sun rises in the first month are 12 window openings, from which proceed a flame when they are opened in their season. Verse 8. When the sun rises in the heaven, he comes forth through that fourth portal 30 mornings in succession, and sets accurately in the fourth portal in the west of the heaven. Verse 9. And during this period the day becomes daily longer and the night nightly shorter to the 30th morning. Verse 10. On that day the day is longer than the night by a 9th part, and the day amounts exactly to 10 parts and the night to 8 parts. Verse 11. And the sun rises from that fourth portal, and sets in the fourth and returns to the fifth portal of the east 30 mornings, and rises from it and sets in the fifth portal. Verse 12. And then the day becomes longer by 2 parts and amounts to 11 parts, and the night becomes shorter and amounts to 7 parts. Verse 13. And it returns to the east and enters into the 6th portal, and rises and sets in the 6th portal 1 and 30 mornings on account of its sign. Verse 14. On that day the day becomes longer than the night, and the day becomes double the night, and the day becomes 12 parts, and the night is shortened and becomes 6 parts. Verse 15. And the sun mounts up to make the day shorter and the night longer, and the sun returns to the east and enters into the 6th portal, and rises from it and sets 30 mornings. Verse 16. And when 30 mornings are accomplished, the day decreases by exactly 1 part, and becomes 11 parts, and the night 7. Verse 17. And the sun goes forth from that 6th portal in the west, and goes to the east and rises in the 5th portal for 30 mornings, and sets in the west again in the 5th western portal. Verse 18. On that day the day decreases by 2 parts, and amounts to 10 parts and the night to 8 parts. Verse 19. And the sun goes forth from that 5th portal and sets in the 5th portal of the west, and rises in the 4th portal for 1 and 30 mornings on account of its sign, and sets in the west. Verse 20. On that day the day is equalized with the night, and becomes of equal length, and the night amounts to 9 parts and the day to 9 parts. Verse 21. And the sun rises from that portal and sets in the west, and returns to the east and rises 30 mornings in the 3rd portal and sets in the west in the 3rd portal. Verse 22. And on that day the night becomes longer than the day, and night becomes longer than night, and day shorter than day till the 30th morning, and the night amounts exactly to 10 parts and the day to 8 parts. Verse 23. And the sun rises from the 3rd portal and sets in the 3rd portal in the west and returns to the east, and for 30 mornings rises in the 2nd portal in the east, and in like manner sets in the 2nd portal in the west of the heaven. Verse 24. And on that day the night amounts to 11 parts and the day to 7 parts. Verse 25. and the sun rises on that day from that second portal and sets in the west in the second portal, and returns to the east into the first portal for 1:30 mornings, and sets in the first portal in the west of the heaven. Verse 26. And on that day the night becomes longer and amounts to the double of the day, and the night amounts exactly to 12 parts and the day to 6. Verse 27. And the sun has, therewith, traversed the divisions of his orbit and turns again on those divisions of his orbit, and enters that portal 30 mornings and sets also in the west opposite to it. Verse 28. And on that night has the night decreased in length by a 9th part, and the night has become 11 parts and the day 7 parts. Verse 29. And the sun has returned and entered into the second portal in the east, and returns on those his divisions of his orbit for 30 mornings, rising and setting. Verse 30. And on that day the night decreases in length, and the night amounts to 10 parts and the day to 8. Verse 31. And on that day the sun rises from that portal, and sets in the west, and returns to the east, and rises in the third portal for 1:30 mornings, and sets in the west of the heaven. Verse 32. On that day the night decreases and amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts, and the night is equal to the day and the year is exactly as to its days 364. Verse 33. And the length of the day and of the night, and the shortness of the day and of the night arise through the course of the sun. These distinctions are made, lit. They are separated. Verse 34. So it comes that its course becomes daily longer, and its course nightly shorter. Verse 35. And this is the law in the course of the sun, and his return as often as he returns 60 times and rises. That is the great luminary which is named the sun, forever and ever. Verse 36. And that which, thus, rises is the great luminary, and is so named according to its appearance, according as the Lord commanded. Verse 37. As he rises, so he sets and decreases not, and rests not, but runs day and night, and his light is 7-fold brighter than that of the moon, but as regards size they are both equal. Whether or not David ever read the book of Enoch, he certainly seemed to have had a very similar view of the sun as a male, coming out of a chamber, or a portal. Psalms 19 verses 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shade his handiwork. 2. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night shadeth knowledge. 3. There is no speech nor language, where their voice is not heard. 4. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun. 5. Which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. 6. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. We will continue this video with Enoch's view of the moon in my next video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video,
it was called Operation Deep Freeze, and tonight a Five on Your Side investigation reveals it may have exposed thousands to radiation.
What did an estimated 15,000 share in common that's now suspected of slowly poisoning them with radiation?
And our investigation found others across the country, all Navy veterans who either died or are fighting cancer, and all shared one thing. They all served at McMurdo Station, a U.S. Navy base in Antarctica, and it was powered by this, a portable nuclear plant.
At one time, I heard the siren. Something happened up there, but we weren't made aware of it.
In fact, we found 438 malfunctions from 1964 through 1972. The Navy's final operating report also found leaking water surrounding the reactor and hairline cracks in the reactor liner as early as 1964.
I was amazed at how many times they had malfunctions. You know, we didn't have an accident, we had a malfunction.
The same report found contaminated soil was loaded into dump trucks, hauled away uncovered, and loaded onto cargo ships for disposal.
Nations which are a party to the Antarctic Treaty System hold an annual meeting.
In this footage, we are going to take a critical look at the Antarctic and Arctic regions and how their varying temperatures disprove the globe Earth and support a flat Earth. If the Earth were truly a globe, the Arctic and Antarctic polar regions and areas of comparable latitude north and south of the equator should share similar conditions and characteristics such as comparable temperatures, seasonal changes, length of daylight, plant and animal life. In reality, however, the Arctic and Antarctic regions and areas of comparable latitude north or south of the equator differ greatly in many ways. If the Earth were to be a globe as popular beliefs suggest, the same amount of heat and cold, summer and winter, should be experienced at the same latitudes north and south of the equator. The same number of plants and animals would be found, and the same general conditions exist. The fact that the very opposite is the case, disproves the globular assumption. The great contrasts between places at the same latitudes north and south of the equator, is a strong argument against the received doctrine of the rotundity of the Earth. Antarctica is by far the coldest place on Earth with an average annual temperature of approximately -57 degrees Fahrenheit, and a record low of -135.8. The average annual temperature at the North Pole, however, is a comparatively warm 4 degrees. Throughout the year, temperatures in the Antarctic vary less than half the amount at comparable Arctic latitudes. The northern Arctic region enjoys moderately warm summers and manageable winters, whereas the southern Antarctic region never even warms enough to melt the perpetual snow and ice. This uniformity of temperature partly accounts for the great accumulation of ice which is formed not on account of the great severity of the winter, but because there is practically no summer to melt it. In the Antarctic there is eternal winter and snow never melts. As far north as a man has traveled he has found reindeer and hare basking in the sun, and country brilliant with rich flora. Within the Antarctic Circle no plant is to be found. The island of Kerguelen at 49 degrees southern latitude has only 18 species of native plants that can survive its hostile climate. Compare this with the island of Iceland at 65 degrees northern latitude, 16 degrees further north of the equator than Kerguelen is south. Yet Iceland is home to 870 species of native plants. On the Isle of Georgia, just 54 degrees southern latitude, the same latitude as Canada or England in the north, where dense forests of various tall trees abound, the infamous Captain Cook wrote that he was unable to find a single shrub large enough to make a toothpick. Cook wrote, "Not a tree was to be seen." The lands which lie to the south are doomed by nature to perpetual frigidness, never to feel the warmth of the sun's rays, whose horrible and savage aspect I have not words to describe. Even marine life is sparse in certain tracts of vast extent, and the seabird is seldom observed flying over such lonely wastes. The contrasts between the limits of organic life in Arctic and Antarctic zones are very remarkable and significant. Vegetables and land animals are found at nearly 80 degrees in the north, while from the parallel of 58 degrees in the south, the lichen and such like plants only clothe the rocks, and seabirds and the cetaceous tribes alone are seen upon the desolate beaches. In the Arctic there are 4 clearly distinguished seasons, warm summers, and an abundance of plant and animal life, none of which can be said of the Antarctic. The Eskimo live as far north as the 79th parallel, whereas in the south no native man is found higher than the 56th. Admiral Ferdinand von Wrangel, the 19th century Russian Arctic explorer, wrote how in the north, countless herds of reindeer, elks, black bears, foxes, sable, and gray squirrels fill the upland forests. Stone foxes and wolves roam over the low ground. Enormous flights of swans, geese, and ducks arrive in spring, and seek deserts where they may molt, and build their nests in safety. Eagles, gulls, and owls pursue their prey along the sea coast. Ptarmigan run in troops among the bushes. Little snipes are busy among the brooks and in the morasses. The social crows seek the neighborhood of man's habitations, and when the sun shines in spring, one may sometimes even hear the cheerful note of the finch, and in autumn that of the thrush. Beyond the 70th degree of southern latitude not a tree meets the eye. Wearied with the white waste of snow, forests, woods, even shrubs have disappeared, and given place to a few lichens and creeping woody plants, which scantily clothe the indurated soil. Still, in the farthest north, nature claims her birthright of beauty, and in the brief and rapid summer she brings forth numerous flowers and grasses, to bloom for a few days, to be again blasted by the swiftly recurring winter. The rapid fervor of an Arctic summer had already, June 1st, converted the snowy waste into luxuriant pasture ground, rich in flowers and grass, with almost the same lively appearance as that of an English meadow. In New Zealand, situated at 42 degrees southern latitude, on the winter solstice the sun rises at 4:31 am and sets at 7:29 pm, making the longest day of the year, 14 hours and 58 minutes. On the summer solstice, the New Zealand sun rises at 7:29 am and sets at 4:31 pm, making the shortest day 9 hours and 2 minutes long. Meanwhile, in England, a full 10 degrees farther north of the equator than New Zealand lies south, the longest day is 16 hours and 34 minutes, the shortest day 7 hours and 45 minutes. Therefore the longest day in New Zealand is 1 hour and 36 minutes shorter than the longest day in England, and the shortest day in New Zealand is 1 hour and 17 minutes longer than the shortest day in England. William Swainson, an Englishman who emigrated and became Attorney General of New Zealand in the mid-19th century, lived in both countries for decades and wrote of their differences. He states as follows: "The range of temperature is limited, there being no excess of either heat or cold. Compared with the climate of England, the summer of New Zealand is but very little warmer, though considerably longer. Even in summer, people here have no notion of going without fires in the evening, but then, though the days are very warm and sunny, the nights are always cold. For 7 months last summer, we had not one day that the sun did not shine as brilliantly as it does in England in the finest day in June, and though it has more power here, the heat is not nearly so oppressive. But then there is not the twilight which you get in England. Here it is light till about 8 o'clock, then, in a few minutes, it becomes too dark to see anything, and the change comes over in almost no time. The seasons are the reverse of those in England. Spring commences in September, summer in December, autumn in April, and winter in June. The days are an hour shorter at each end of the day in summer, and an hour longer in the winter than in England. In the flat Earth model of the cosmos, these Arctic/Antarctic phenomena are easily accounted for and exactly what would be expected. If the Sun circles over and around the Earth every 24 hours, steadily traveling from tropic to tropic every 6 months, it follows that the northern, central region would annually receive far more heat and sunlight than the southern circumferential region. Since the Sun must sweep over the larger southern region in the same 24 hours it has to pass over the smaller northern region, its passage must necessarily be proportionally faster as well. This is why the Antarctic morning dawn and evening twilight are very abrupt, whereas in the extreme north twilight continues for hours after sunset and many midsummer nights the sun does not set at all. If the sun is fixed, and the earth revolves underneath it, the same phenomena would exist at the same distance on each side of the equator, but such is not the case. What can cause the twilight in New Zealand to be so much more sudden, or the nights so much colder than in England? The southern hemisphere cannot revolve more rapidly than the northern. The latitudes are about the same, and the distance round a globe would be the same at 50 degrees south as at 50 degrees north, and as the whole would revolve once in 24 hours, the surface at the two places would pass underneath the sun with the same velocity, and the light would approach in the morning, and recede in the evening in exactly the same manner, yet the very contrary is the fact. The constant sunlight of the north develops, with the utmost rapidity, numerous forms of vegetable life, and furnishes subsistence for millions of living creatures. But in the south, where the sunlight never dwells, or lingers about a central region, but rapidly sweeps over sea and land, to complete in 24 hours the great circle of the southern circumference, it has not time to excite and stimulate the surface, and, therefore, even in comparatively low southern latitudes, everything wears an aspect of desolation. These differences in the north and south could not exist if the Earth were a globe, turning upon axes underneath a non-moving sun. The two hemispheres would at the same latitudes have the same degree of light and heat, and the same general phenomena, both in kind and degree. The peculiarities which are found in the south as compared with the north, are only such as could exist upon a stationary plane, having a northern center, concentric with which is the path of the moving sun. Every year the sun is along south of the equator as he is north, and if the earth were not stretched out as it is, but turned under, as the Newtonian theory suggests, it would certainly get as intensive a share of the sun's rays south as north, but the southern region being, in consequence of the fact stated, far more extensive than the region north, the sun, having to complete his journey round every 24 hours, travels quicker as he goes further south, from September to December. And his influence has less time in which to accumulate at any given point. Since, then the facts could not be as they are if the Earth were a globe, it is a proof that the Earth is...
Good evening and thank you for joining me. In today's video, which is a repeat of the previous video that had audio issues, I am going to once again look at Operation High Jump and the journey into Antarctica to find the dome. Now, in this presentation or in this video, I will chronicle the history of Antarctic expedition as well as demonstration of how the dome functions. Now, let's get started. Immediately after World War II, the US Navy launched the largest military operation ever down to Antarctica, called Operation High Jump. Admiral Byrd, a 33-degree Freemason, led the expedition of 30 ships and 4,700 militarized soldiers. The mission had 3 task forces that were sent out in different directions and was to last 6 to 8 months, but the fleet came back in just 6 weeks. Admiral Byrd reported UFO sightings, but that was a public relations ruse. They were really trying to find out about the electromagnetic field above the ice wall and the edge of the dome. Just several years later, the US and the Russians began firing over 49 high-altitude thermonuclear rockets up into the dome with Operation Fishbowl and Operation Domino. Rockets went haywire and many had to be aborted as they tried to blast through the dome. Then, both the Russians and the United States signed off on a ban on any more tests of the dome as a space race, and the fake moon mission were sold to the world. Why is then Antarctica under military occupation? This mission was created on the fly. Even the ship's Admiral Byrd complained they did not know their mission. This was right after World War II, and they even had to recommission ships in both heads for the effort, with rookie sailors and pilots who had never flown in Antarctic conditions. Why was the rush? 3 task forces went down for a 6 to 8 month mission with Russia, Britain and Norway, but yet returned in just 6 weeks. What then happened? The next year, Secretary of Navy James Foster committed suicide, and the following year, Admiral Byrd, who led all Antarctic missions, and a 33-degree Freemason is knocked off. So why? Then in 1962, both Russia and the United States set off over 40 thermonuclear devices at the dome, trying to blast through it. Then in 1963, test bombs of high nuclear devices. Kennedy announces moonshot and then was assassinated. Were they trying to find the dome? Was the journey down to find the dome? What they found was Mars' electromagnetic energy at 600 miles up, exactly where the dome is supposed to be. And in the same year, the Van Allen belts were discovered, located at the same distance of 600 miles up. This is exactly the same field that Nikola Tesla was referring to as well. Admiral Byrd was an active Freemason. He became a member of the Federal Lodge No. 1, Washington, D.C. on March 19, 1921, and affiliated with Kane Lodge No. 454, New York City, in September 18, 1928. He was a member of the National Surgeon Chapter No. 3 at Washington. He and his pilot, Baines Belchin, dropped Masonic flags on the 2 poles. Belchin also added his shriek specs. In the Antarctic expedition of 1933 and 1935, 60 of the 82 members were Freemasons, and on February 5, 1935, established First Antarctic Lodge No. 777 of the New Zealand Constitution. It seems incredible that so shortly after a war that had decimated most of Europe and crippled global economies, an expedition to Antarctica was undertaken with so much haste. It took advantage of the very first available Antarctic summer after the war, at such cost and with so much military hardware, unless the operation was absolutely essential to the security of the United States. Speaking of the state of the world, what then is hidden in Antarctica? Why would you be arrested for exploring Antarctic secret? Why did so many nations sign the Antarctic Treaty and restrict your travel south of the region? Operation Fishbowl was a series of high-altitude nuclear tests in 1962 that were carried out by the United States as part of the larger Operation Dominic nuclear program. According to Wikipedia, the Soviet Union's K-Project nuclear test series was a group of 5 nuclear tests conducted in 1961 to 1962. This test followed the 1961 Soviet nuclear test series and preceded the 1962 Soviet nuclear test series. The K-Project nuclear testing series were all high-altitude tests fired by missiles from the Kapustin launch site in Russia across central Kazakhstan towards the Sari Shagan test range. Has modern science discovered the phenomenon? And is the Van Allen belt part of it? Why has NASA on more than one occasion wanted to blow it up and all punch holes in it accordingly? Why has NASA on more than one occasion wanted to blow it up and all punch holes in something they already admit is here for our protection? How come Orion, NASA spacecraft, can't get through the Van Allen belt? Yet, we were told Apollo had no problem doing so 40 years ago. These and many more questions are left unanswered. I would like to hear your view on this in the comment section. Please also give me feedback on the entire video and the audio. Thank you for watching. This video is a repeat of a video that had a very poor audio quality, which was uploaded a few days ago. Many of you advised that I should do a repeat of the video, so here you have it. If you are here for the first time, please subscribe, and as usual, keep your feedback coming. Remember to drop a thumbs up and share this video with your friends and family. Thank you for watching. Peace.
On February 26, 1947, a battle took place, which is described by a member of the expedition, an experienced pilot called John Siverson. A series of black flying saucer-like ships flew out of the water